We'll get started. Hi, everyone. It's great to see everyone here. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Wayne and John, wherever Wayne is. Thank you, and the rest of the team from Fox. Thank you so much for having us. We love being here. Thank you. As you know, the studios give everyone here, I think, a half discount on any production that are coming in. So well done, everyone, for being here. We love being here. I'm the CEO of Screen Producers Australia, for those that don't know me. I look after the organisation. Thank you for the team that put these events on. Thank you, everyone in my team. We do three key things. We work with government to represent the industry's views. We work with the rest of the industry to stabilise as best we can the industrial frameworks that exist to make everyone's lives easy in producing. And we love putting on events and activities. We do, obviously, the Screen Forever big conference, and it is a great pleasure to do these breakfasts throughout the year because we get a chance to get up close and personal with incredible people. Michael Brealey, welcome to your first breakfast briefing with Screen Producers Australia.
Thank you.
And can we have a round of applause for Michael? It's a new job, new exciting times. We've got a few people from Create New South Wales here. He gets a coffee. There's a lot of interest. Do you want to grab a seat, guys? There's just hanging around the back, like, you know, come and grab a seat. I think there's a lot of interest in chatting with Michael because he's relatively new to many people, but an old face to a lot of other people. So this is your opportunity, I guess, to have a chance to talk to Michael. And as per usual, this is a Chatham House rule. There's no media here. We're going to be chatting for about half an hour, and then there'll be questions for about 15 or so minutes. We'll see how we go, and then an opportunity to come up and say hello to Michael afterwards. Let's go through a bit of your background, because people won't maybe be as familiar. I knew, I think, when you were working at the Department of Communications, right? And so, was that your first job after uni, or did you do something else?
That was my first real job after uni, yeah. So
there was another job that you just don't want to talk about.
I delivered pizzas and did market research.
So were you a Canberra kid, or
no? I'm from Melbourne. I grew up in Broadmeadows. Went to school with Carl Williams, who's the star of Underbelly, and it's my claim to fame. And then moved to Canberra for work, actually.
Yeah. Right. And you're at the department for how many years?
8 years.
Right. Policy?
Broadcast policy mainly, broadcast and screen policy, and some time on telco policy.
And you were at DLO for a while, Department Liaison?
Yeah, I was up in the DLO, which is the Department Liaison, in Richard Alston's office for about 3 years, which was in education.
That was quite a long time as a DLO.
Yeah, that was, usually they shift us out within a year.
So why did you stay?
I was doing a reasonable job, I think, and it was very interesting work. You know, it's you're right at the place where the decisions are being made, in a policy-wise, and so it was a really good experience.
What happened during those 3 years in Alston's office? What was the big thing that happened?
They sold Telstra. We and I was involved with establishing the first ever community television licence regime, which was great. Worked a lot with the CBAA and the CBF to get that work done. There was lots of work around intellectual property.
You're having to think back over your CV.
Time ago.
And you met your wife there?
Yes, that's
nice.
Right.
There you go. So
well, that's where you related to. Sorry.
Yeah, no, well, it wasn't all work. It was some fun. Right. Can I, after that, ABC, straight away?
No, I was at Vodafone for about 5 years.
Okay.
Doing content regulation there, and then headed up their government relations function, and then to the ABC.
And tell us about the ABC.
5 years at the ABC.
What were you doing?
CTV. I was the head of strategy, policy, and governance. So had a seat at the commissioning table, at the executive table. Did a lot of work with producers around compliance with our code and our editorial policies, but also set the strategy. So did the strategic planning for TV. Worked closely with Kim Dalton and then with Richard.
You reported to Kim. Just bring your microphone up a little.
Yeah, I reported to Kim. Yeah.
And how were those years? This was, give me the time frame. It was 2000.
It was great. It was very exciting. That was when we just got the new money. So there was a lot of work going on, building up the team. A lot of really exciting content being developed and then produced, and a lot of focus on TV.
What years were they?
When did I start there?
Drink the coffee. You'll feel much better about it.
What year is it now? 17? Yeah.
2017. And the 5 years, though, was...
Sorry?
5 years at the ABC.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah.
What period? Like, when was the money? The money came in about 2012?
Yeah, so it was 2012 I started, I think. Yeah.
That could be
No,
right.
that can't
Yeah.
be right. It was earlier than that.
All right, we'll go back to that later because I do want to dive into the ABC. What are your memories of that period during the ABC? Because there's a lot to be done. There was a lot that had to be achieved because you had a huge amount of money. And how did it get organised? Like, was it a really complicated thing to kind of be dropping all of that money into the system, or was there a sort of a structure to how you did it? Do you remember much about that period?
Oh, no, look, I think first of all it was about restructuring the teams, which we did. So there was, first of all, there was a bigger focus on children's content and the Indigenous unit, and we beefed up the drama team. And then it was just a matter of ramping up what we were already doing. So a lot of those structures were already in place. It was just about doing more.
Okay. We might, given, and you would have seen, and you have seen Kim's paper.
Yes, he gave me a copy.
Yes. We might talk a bit about the ABC in a minute or two, but let's get going as we go through your entire CV. Then after that, a bit of freelancing, did some work with us.
Worked with you.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing. Matt Hancock, wherever you are, did nothing. This was the show. And then working for the New South Wales government.
Yes, so then I went to Arts New South Wales, Director of Policy and Strategy there for 6 months, 4 months, and then I was the Executive Director of Arts, Acting, so straight into it, for about knowing nothing about arts, and straight into arts for being the ED for about, 6 months.
What was that like, learning 6 months?
It was a very steep learning curve. It's about connections, it's about stakeholders, and there's a lot of, on the arts side, of course, there's a lot of money moving around, some very, very big institutions with well-connected boards, so there's a lot of getting to know people and getting to understand art forms and just getting to know the sector, really.
In terms of the bureaucracy within the New South Wales government, where was it sitting as a structure?
So it's quite interesting, I think, that years ago, New South Wales, there was a Ministry for the Arts, and then there was just arts being a part of another ministry, and Screen being an agency, quite separate agency, an independent agency with its own Act of Parliament and its own advisory, its own board at that point. Then arts...
The New South Wales Film and Television Office.
Yeah, exactly. Then arts became part of Department of Communities, I think it was, and Screen came over at the same time, stopped being an agency and also became part of the department, but it maintained its act and it maintained its advisory committee. And then, well, they both moved around a lot, trying to find suitable homes for cultural policy and cultural activity seems to be a bit of a problem in the New South Wales Public Service. So from communities to industry to justice, where we fit very well, and then to planning, where we are now.
And all these things are kind of pulled around because of the portfolio of the minister and the combination.
Well,
and no one usually has arts on their own. They're kind of, it's arts and, I don't know, policing or arts and,
Yes, exactly. So look, I'm making light, but actually we move around because ministers want to have the cultural portfolio and we go to wherever that minister happens to be. So now we're planning.
Okay, and let's just unpicking that then further. You had that for 6 months and then you move into a different role within the bureaucracy.
So then Screen and Arts were both spilled.
Yep.
And a new agency, Create, was formed. Didn't actually come into official being until 3rd of April. So we're around less than a month. But I was appointed to my role at the end of January. Yeah. Yeah. I was the CEO of Create, and there was no Create for about 2 months. So.
Well, let's talk about the structure then. And I think that's where probably a lot of people are interested in where and how things are fitting together at the moment. So Create New South Wales is a combination of those two elements within government that were separately not their own, they weren't separate structures per se before, but they had separate brands, or not? Can you just sort of give me the background?
Look, I've been asked a few questions, and one of them is, what happened to Screen New South Wales? Do we have any sort of representation for the screen industry in New South Wales? What is Create, and who are you? So,
spill the beans.
And where's the money?
Who are you?
Where's the money? So, Screen and Arts were both, by the time we got around to forming Create, Screen and Arts were both branches of a department. They both had CEOs, and we spilled a lot and created a new agency, which is Create New South Wales, that I am the head of. Now, Create has dedicated screen functions like Screen New South Wales did, and dedicated arts functions. There's the screen attraction team and the screen investment team. There's two quite distinct funding programs, one for arts, one for screen. They haven't been changed, and they're not going to change. I think there's been enough sort of change from our side for the moment. So we're not going to change the funding programs. It's business as usual. We want to make sure there's certainty out there for everyone, just in terms of how they operate. And so Create was formed. I'm the CEO, and we have taken all of Create. We've pulled it out of the Department of Justice, and we've stuck it into the Department of Planning. So my first 3 months in this job have been about getting the structure right, making sure we keep our budget, making sure our funding programs aren't touched, making sure we have enough staff, and embedding us in it, making sure the computers work and we have telephones. Yeah.
So we'll go through some of the practical challenges, but is there a brand Screen New South Wales? Okay, so that'll continue to be labelling everything that the screen industry does.
Strong brand, we didn't want to lose it, so we kept the brand. There was no brand really for Arts New South Wales, it was just a sort of function.
Okay, and so how are the team functions? Because there's obviously, plus maybe you can spill them out. Are there any negatives in combining arts and screen together under the one brand? I'm assuming there are positives, or else they wouldn't have been done. And maybe you can articulate some things about what are the positives and negatives of doing essentially what's happened.
So the negative is a perception thing, I think. I think that people feel that there is no screen agency. There's no dedicated screen agency, and that's got to be a bad thing, which I completely understand. But having said that, there is a screen agency. It's called Create New South Wales now, and there is, like I said, dedicated resource to screen, a funding program. But more than that, I mean, combining both agencies means that, as opposed to previously where we had pretty much one person dedicated to comms and media in screen, we now got a team of 6. For screen, we didn't have a lot of support in terms of business management and operations. We now have a team of 3 or 4 people doing that. In screen, we didn't have access to an operations budget that was really of much use. We now have access to a much bigger pool of operational funding. All those things are bonuses.
What about the staff though? Because assume that they have, and you've got a great team, and we might talk about the people in the team, and there's new people coming in. But have they got priorities both for screen and arts? So how confusing are their days in the sense that they got to deal with the complication of the screen industry and the complication of how many people in the arts sector, and how does that sort of set priorities for them on an individual basis?
Well, look, like I said, there's separate teams. So there's the screen investment team, the screen attraction team, then there's the arts investment team. And the one who's most confused is probably Sophia and me, because we're the ones who have to bring all that together at the top and figure out
So Sophia's responsibilities are both across arts and screen?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Is she the only person apart from you that's got that double head?
No, so the engagement and communications team is not just about comms, it's engagement, it's about industry engagement. Previously we had no sort of formal structure about how to better engage and advocate. It was something we did while we're also doing investment. We now have a team that's dedicated to that, and they're across both sides.
And look, I suppose one of the things that one can see operating is that you've got strong people that have got screen backgrounds and understand the industry in place at the moment. One of the risks are that the next person in your role, or the next person in Sophia's role, the next person in someone else's role doesn't have that background. It's maybe comes from a theatre background. Great that they're there, but they don't maybe give screen the same priority. So I guess there's that certainty that people feel, oh, how long can this structure be as rosy as it is? What's to stop it changing in the next iteration of people that come through it?
Well, a couple of things. There's a few checks and balances, one of which is a screen has an act, and there's certain requirements under the act, and there's a screen advisory, and there's a funding program that has to be delivered, and that's not going to change no matter who happens to be in charge.
Is that funding program set up in that those dollars and amounts can move presumably depending on the budgets that you're setting, or are they sort of
They can, but they're in forward estimates, right? So there is forward estimates amount in there for screen, and it's 4 years out, and that's not about to change. Not only that, but of course the New South Wales government made a commitment to Made in New South Wales last year, which was an extra $20 million over 2 years. That money is dedicated to Screen. It's not about to go anywhere else. It's funny, I've had similar conversations with people from the outside. What's going to happen to our money? Is it all going to go on Screen? Screen is so sexy. You're from
And
Screen. Are you going to spend our money on other stuff? And I say, yeah, I am. No, so no, I think we are being very careful to make sure people understand that the two parts of the business that deal with Screen and arts are still, there's lots of overlap, and we're finding lots of really useful connections. And there is, like I said, a shared pool of sort of resource and operational cash. But in terms of the strategy for Screen, the strategy for arts, and the funding programs, business as usual.
Okay, let's talk about the balance that you've got to deliver between local content and maybe the pull down from overseas into filling these sort of spaces with international content. How complicated is that to get right? And I don't know, there's that 20 million was a combination of both of those needs to be met. How are you going with the 20 million, or how is the agency going with achieving a balance across local and international with that 20 million?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So first year we were allocated 13 million, which we have committed all of that. And we were trying to draw a balance between television drama and footloose features.
What's the balance? Did you?
Well, so it's this year it was in favour of features, but that's largely because of demand, what came along. We don't have an agenda about we're focusing on features and not on TV drama. Actually, I'm a big fan of TV drama, so it's
Do
really...
you mean features, international features, or do you mean local features?
A bit of both. So the ones that we funded this year were all footloose, but there was Australian involvement.
And going forward, that money, I mean, I think I told you I had a meeting with Gladys last year, and she was like, yeah, that money's guaranteed. But
I'm glad you can confirm that for us. Thank you.
Done. But I mean, that is the uncertainty around that particular pocket of money, and indeed your overall funding. How long do you have a definite commitment in your head that this money's sitting for, and how?
You mean for Made in New South Wales?
Well, yeah, and your overall funding. Your funding's only committed a certain number of years as well, isn't it?
So core funding for Screen rolls. I mean, we've had $9.9, $10 million worth of funding per year each year for about the last 4 years, I think. And it's in forward estimates for another 4.
And of that money, how much goes into investment?
So of that money, about 8 million, a bit more than 8, goes into funding programs. The rest is spent on staff. The 20 million, like I said, 2 years, but the trick is to get that rusted on, is to get an amount...
Gladys promised me, it's all right.
Okay, can you remind me?
I'll try. No, I mean, that is something we've got to work on, and I don't know, we've talked about it. In terms of how things are working internally, how do decisions get made, I guess? Do you end up in the same sort of... I mean, you've been across a process within the ABC. Is it the same sort of process internally? Is there a committee of people deciding projects? Are you overseeing and signing off on everything that goes beyond a certain level of investment? Is the minister or your advisory committee? Just remind us how the governance structures of payments essentially coming out of the organisation works.
So for development, we work closely with applicants, and like I said, we have a team internally who are a group of specialists. They'll develop with Sophia a list of recommendations for me, and then we will go through that. It's usually small amounts of money.
What sort of small amounts?
Well, anything from 1,000 to 10,000. And we'll make the call on development. For production investment, the team will make recommendations to me. I will sign off on those. They'll go to the advisory committee, and it's their role to decide.
What sort of size money?
For production?
Yeah.
About 4.8 million last year.
In terms of, they get every decision on investment, or only do you have any?
Yep, they all go there.
Okay. And does the minister sign off on any of that, or
The minister signs off on the budget at the start of the year.
He doesn't get involved in the day-to-day?
Not in individual decision-making on projects, unless it's a really big footloose and we're drawing the money from Made in New South Wales, in which case the minister and the minister for the deputy premier now both sign off.
And is that for that's the 20 million?
Yeah.
Okay, so that affects also investments in TV drama out of that
so
fund?
that's split between TV drama and features.
But the minister will get involved in the decisions around
Anything
all of
from
those.
that fund, yeah, because we borrowed that money from another department. So
Nice. Let's not give it back. And then just like, I know we're running out of time with some of these questions before we get onto some industry stuff, but I'm sure there'll be other questions about this. I was reflecting on the fact that when you get given this sort of a opportunity, you know, and it's a big opportunity. It's a new agency. You know, I don't know how long your contract is. I don't need to necessarily go into that. But how long? I guess, do you want to be in this job? And how long? Maybe what more importantly, what do you want to do in this job? Like, what's your vision for Create New South Wales? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to look back on and say, oh, Michael Brealey did this. This is what we achieved. Because I guess there's a reflection on what has been achieved in the past and continuing certain things. You might want to talk about that, what has been done previously. But then there's an opportunity to put a mark on something and to take something forward. I was interested in what your vision for the organisation is.
Look, so I think there's a range of good things that Screen New South Wales have done that we want to continue doing around diversity. Some great programs that need to continue.
What sort of things?
Oh, well, about the gender targets, which have been successful and we want to keep on with. And I think we need to explore how we extend those kinds of programs and that kind of thinking into the art side of the portfolio as well. I think for me, one of the main things is that we need to, like on the art side of the business, less so than on the screen side, but on the art side, there has been no advocacy for the industry, really. I think the department's role was always just hand out the money and don't get involved in policy particularly. So not so much for screen, but for both, I think what I would like to see is for us to be advocating a very clear and loud voice for more investment in screen, more investment in arts.
And can you do that? Because that sort of treads on toes potentially.
Well, usually you can't, but in forming this agency, one of the things that Cabinet agreed to was that we would advocate for on behalf of stakeholders. So
awesome.
Now, you know, you're right, it's tricky. We've got our political leaders, but we'll have to find a way through because I think we need to be quite a loud voice within government. I mean, this is one thing that I think it's difficult to comprehend, but there's lots of money swishing around in government, and then you form these groups which talk across portfolio about, you know, you're investing X amount in a hospital, you're investing X amount in a freeway. Have you thought about cultural investment? And so it's important for us to raise awareness across government as well as it is for us to raise awareness across the rest of the community about the importance of our industries. And that's something I think we really need to focus on.
So can I then lead you, if in terms of looking back, am I right to say that one of the things you'd like to have put a mark on is the raising of awareness, raising of profile of, is that what you're getting to?
Yes, absolutely. But there's certain issues like, I mean, at the ABC, I did a lot of work around the offset, producer offset, getting it to parity. I think that's something we should be talking about, even though it's a federal issue.
Let's talk about some of the policy stuff separately. But I'm more interested, and not to push you, is where do you want to be? Where do you want to create New South Wales in its own right to be taken to? What do you want to leave a mark on that organisation or your organisation?
Well, apart from being efficient and effective, and yes, well, so I would like us to be better resourced. I mean, I would like for that $20 million to be something that stays with Screen. The level of investment needs to pick up, and I think that's just the start. I think we need to work on our colleagues in industry to make sure they understand that there's a great opportunity here, and that we need to build on what we've already got. In the same way, I think we need to draw in other parts of the sector. So we had 360 Vision last week that was really successful. We were talking about artists being involved with VR practitioners, but you know, creative industries, which has a lot of screen content, sits in another portfolio altogether. That should come across as well. We should consolidate.
What do you think the biggest challenge you're going to have in this role is, or can you maybe tackle the thing that you need to bone up on the quickest in the role? Is there an area that, you know, we talked a bit about infrastructure, and I didn't realise that was actually sitting in your portfolio. But is there a couple of things you want to tap into in terms of the thing that, you know, is the challenge right away?
You touched the biggest challenge has been infrastructure. I don't know a thing about it, and we've been neck deep in moving the Powerhouse Museum. You might have heard of the Powerhouse Museum. and building the Walsh Bay Arts and Cultural Precinct. This is hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment. It's extraordinarily time consuming. So that's been a challenge, coming up to speed on that sort of thing, and it's been a drain. You know, I'd like to be focused on other things as well as that. But I think, so, you know, I've worked in screen for 10 years really, of time in the department, but there's more to be done. Like I said, most people don't know who I am, so I need to get out and about and meet more people. And it's not just about raising the profile of screen in New South Wales, and not just about investment, it's about levels of activity. So we want to see more.
And I guess that's the complexity of juggling a million things all at once. How competitive is the state game of keeping businesses here, bringing in international production, making sure Victoria doesn't take everything, all those West Australians have got more money, you know, how much of that game playing occupies you and your team in trying to make sure that you're competitive here?
Well, to an extent, but to be honest, it's largely about investment. If you have the money to invest, then you can attract the activity, which is, you know, we've had more money this year. It's made a difference. We just need to make sure we can do more of that.
Okay, let's move away from Create New South Wales and talk just briefly about the industry for a sec. What do you think of Kim's paper and his suggestions?
Shut up.
Well, the floor's yours, Michael.
He raises a really good point about the tension between the independence of the ABC and its role in supporting local production and local production industries. So, I completely sympathise with maintaining the independence of the ABC. You know, I can see problems arising from the government playing a role in saying, you will spend X amount on this. So I can see a point where, you know, it's possible where a government might say, you'll spend X amount on screen production, X amount on regional radio, because that's something that backbenchers love, and you'll do it out of your existing allocation. You won't get any additional money, and so other things will naturally fall off. And so that could be dangerous, because there might be things that governments deliberately don't want to flourish that need to. So maintaining the independence of the ABC is important. But having said that, the ABC's role in investing in local production is also extremely important. And you know, to be fair to the ABC, they do spend a lot of time and effort figuring out how they can invest incrementally, and and the television division in particular spends quite a lot of time clawing back money to try and invest in local production. So, but it's difficult because of course, there are other pressures on managing directors when it comes to a big organisation like that.
I think you hedged your bets and didn't answer the question.
It was well done, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I saw it through it. I mean, the BBC has recently been asked, or not asked, been told to come under the Ofcom system.
Yep.
And it's there that the non-politicisation of the BBC is arguably able to be maintained, because you've got an independent regulator determining a content standard for the BBC and determining competition issues for the BBC. And there are separately terms of trade in the UK that manage this. Why isn't that a beautiful solution in Australia, or is it?
Well, it's a matter of debate within the ABC, I think. So if you'd come to me at some point and said...
When you're at the ABC.
When I was at the ABC, how about content quotas? No, I would have said, yeah, cool, bring it, because then, you know, they've got to fund us to do it, and we want to do it. We want to make more Australian content, more the better.
And I always felt Kim was torn between arguing that, you know, quietly saying yes, 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 but not being able to do that externally, of course.
No, because the independence of the ABC is an extremely important thing to protect. Yeah.
All right. Any other issues that he's raised that you would like to flag? He's launching his paper tonight. Just in terms of other kind of maybe big picture issues, how do you see the regulatory model? We're about to do and I think you're speaking at the ACMA 2-day content conversation. Where's the way forward with regulation?
The way forward. I'll get my crystal ball out.
Yeah, well, come on, you've had a lot of time in the department. You've been across policy for a long time. You would be, if you're in the department now, you'd be having to crystal ball it. I know the industry is collectively looking to bring in international players into the market, trying to get them to contribute. There's got to be a rebalancing of certain regulations. What do you think about it all? Presumably you're going to be on stage in a couple of weeks talking about this.
Look, I'm not certain what I'll be talking about there. I think they wanted me to talk about content. So, look, as I have been saying for a long time, and as I was saying at the ABC, you know, we all know it's a dynamic, changing marketplace. Yes, audiences are fragmenting. There's a lot of new players internationally. The trick is about demand for content production. So we need to have people who are commissioning. Now, that's not necessarily going to be foreign players, and even if it is, the revenues are going to flow overseas. So how do we incentivise them to do that? Because there is no stick to force foreign producers to you know, set a content quota or make Australian content. There's got to be an incentive scheme, I think.
Well, the sticks that other territories are implementing, which to do with the regulatory models and so I don't think you can dismiss that.
But will they? So are those markets where they're more loath to walk away, or are they bigger markets?
Oh, and I don't think any. I mean,
markets with language
we're having
barriers.
a debate now here. There are, and I think that you've got to kind of work on that. And I think good corporate citizens will participate in this market. So I think you've got to work through that.
Hey, look, whatever will work. You know, I just think there probably needs to be a combination of things. And the same goes domestically. We need to have commissioners of content who can spend the money to deliver on their obligations. And it's got to be a mix of obligations and healthy industry.
The federal-state dynamic, especially in investment, strikes me as sometimes not particularly aligned. There's sometimes different objectives about international objectives. There's different objectives about investment. Is there a problem there structurally that we need to kind of keep working on?
I think we always need to work on aligning with between the states and feds. A month in, I'm probably not qualified to say exactly how that should change or how it should be fixed. I've only met with Screen Australia once since I started, obviously quite a lot before that. But yeah, I think that just at the highest threshold, we need to work a lot more closely with them to make sure we're aligning our efforts.
And over the number of years, in terms of how the industry is presenting itself to government and maybe to the ABC when you were there, but I'm always interested in how there's a message from us, there's a message from Ozfilm, there's a message from Screen Australia in different ways, there's a message from others. Do you see problems there, or do you think that's actually quite fine in terms of the number of positions that are coming into government?
There will always be differences of opinion. I think we need to accept that. I think where it's problematic is on those issues where competition gets in the way of a good policy outcome. So go back to it, but the producer offset, that's a great example. I mean, you remember we were lobbying around that 7 years
successful.
ago.
7 years
and
of work.
There were people in the industry who were saying yes, and others in the industry who were saying no, simply because they saw some competitive advantage to a competitor. So, I mean, I'm glad that that's changed, but there will, and that sort of thing, there should be unity of voice, but there's always going to be difference of opinion.
Let's throw it open. Are there immediate questions for Michael in terms of the types of issues he's facing, direction for Create New South Wales? Anyone want to jump in? The audience.
Excellent.
We're having an early mark.
Get a coffee.
I want to talk a little bit about the focus.
You're going to keep going?
Yeah, I'll keep going if no one else will. I've got a million. Pauline, do you want to jump in?
So the total envelope of funding doesn't change because of the merge. That stays the same, and that's going to be a decision for government about which we'll be talking to government. There has to be a decision around extending the Made in New South Wales fund this year. So we've got it next financial year, but we need to start having those conversations this year. So the merge makes no difference to the total amount of funding we have to put into the sector. But the difference it makes is what we have available operationally. So there's operational funding that we can use for resourcing contractors where we need to, spending more on our advocacy and engagement work where we need to, and doing some research. There's a small amount of money, but it's money we didn't have before.
Just to flag as well, I think our next breakfast may in fact actually be with the Minister. So it's a great opportunity to come up together and talk to him about how wonderful the industry is, but also, you know, give him an opportunity to talk about how successful the Made in New South Wales fund's been and for the future.
Yeah, exactly. Look, he's a fan of Screen, and I think
Why wouldn't he be? Look at us.
exactly. And he's very, very engaged. So I think he'd be very happy to have those sorts of conversations.
How much time do you get with him?
I had an hour and a half with him yesterday. It's usually about once a fortnight. Depends. Issues come up, you just go and sort them out.
And what issues were they, Michael? Do you want to share?
Ha.
Okay. There's another question. I think Marcus, sorry.
Yeah, very, very. And she was out here with Wayne, wasn't she? She did a tour of Peter Rabbit. I think I think she might be talking about coming back again. She seems to be. I've only met her the once, but she was very engaged and very interested. I mean, good politicians are very interested in absolutely everything, but she seemed to be very interested.
We did meet her in her electoral office, and she was. I mean, you know, a good politician, you just got a bullshit opportunity everywhere. But there was a genuineness about the interest in and concern for the sector, and genuine interest in the overall arts and creative community, but also screen. So I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't think that was necessarily her shtick, but it was. And she was quite beefed up on and boned up on a lot of the information about the industry. And that was before she became Premier. So, yeah. Oh, here we go. Yep.
So we haven't established a research agenda yet. We actually just hired the research manager last week.
Who is it?
Her name is Cassandra. I can't remember.
You've been
Only
let
a
down
week.
by Sophia. Oh my God.
So we haven't established the research agenda yet. Something that we will do over the next coming few weeks. I'll speculate.
Focus would be sustainability, cultural need.
Governments are always interested in the economic return on our investment. I actually feel like we've done that to death. We have those sorts of stats, and to be honest, someone who wants to build a stadium can walk into the government without any stats about the return and still get the money. So I think we also need to talk about the social, cultural benefits of our products, not just the economic, and I'd be very keen to do some work around that. Probably is as simple as case studies, but hopefully it would be a bit more than case studies.
It's worth actually pointing out, given the appointment, there have been, and there have been lags in people in terms of, it has been in terms of people being employed, there's been people you need to get into place, there's new teams starting this week, I think. So there's been sort of changes and transitional things that you've observed and needed to happen because the agency's sort of reforming, is that right?
Yeah. Yep. So we brought on board 20,
It wasn't
20,
business as usual.
20 new people yesterday. No, last week, sorry, I should say last week. 20 new people arrived in the building last week.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry, I'll let you finish, but I'm going to talk to that, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Getting people to pay attention to a message like that is tricky, so you have to find ways of doing it that are engaging. I just, first of all, go to the point about should I spend money on a life-saving medicine or money on the screen product. I find that infuriating because governments, not just governments, but people do that all the time. But that's not the comparison to draw. I mean, let's spend less on your superannuation politicians and more on screen. Not talk about life-saving medicine. There's lots of money. Let's spend less on one propeller for a battleship. I mean, that'll do us, but that'll fund us for a couple of years. So, I mean, those sorts of comparisons I find infuriating.
Yeah, they did use that a bit, didn't they? It was a fair point to draw it out, but it is.
So I use that example because years ago when I was in Canberra, I did have a meeting with, I was at the ABC at the time, had a meeting with a staffer in a minister's office, and we were asking for some more money, not much. And he said, don't feel embarrassed about it. We spend more than you can imagine on a propeller on a battleship, so you should be coming and asking. So. Absolutely. Yep. Totally. And so, one of the foundational sort of principles for creating the new agency was about we need to not just talk to our clients, people we fund. We need to talk to everybody about what is the narrative. What is the narrative for the screen industry in New South Wales? What is the narrative for the broader arts and cultural industries in New South Wales? To that end, the Minister has set up this advisory committee.
Which is separate from the advisory committee for funding.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Yes, there's no correlation. This advisory committee that the Minister set up has terms of reference which explicitly exclude them from considering funding issues. But the main thing that they've been considering, there's a few things, but is how do you talk to everyone about how important the industry is? What's the story you're going to tell? What are the channels you use? So there's people on there that's their bread and butter. That's what they do, is that they market and they promote. So that's been quite useful to us. They've only met twice. We've got a draft piece of work from them about what the narrative should be and how you talk to the people of New South Wales about what we all do. Fleshing that out is going to be something for us. And it's actually going to be... so there's two strategies we need to develop in the next couple of months. One is, what is our engagement strategy? What are the resources we're devoting to it? And the other one is, more broadly speaking, our strategic forward plan. And that'll be a public document. So, but that's the sort of things we do really need to speak to.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, so I had, like I said, I had this, we've established this cross-departmental committee. And
that sounds really dry.
It is, and but this is it, day to day.
Jesus.
It's exciting when I force my way into a cross-departmental committee to talk about foreign investment screen. But this particular one, we've had two meetings. The first agenda item was around we need to renew the protocols. Everyone around the table agrees that they've been extremely useful and that they do need to be looked at again. And so that's a piece of work we have in train right now.
Can I ask just...
Yeah. Yeah, so that's... like I said, we've had this initial conversation where it's put on the table. This is something we want them all to come together to work with us on, and so it's just a matter of getting that to happen now. There's been follow-up conversations, but we need to call together all of those stakeholders to identify where the updates should be. We've got our own views.
I think we might wrap it in a sec so you can have more coffees. And I've got a couple more, but Vincent, yeah. Well, it's a good question. Is it create is it Screen New South Wales or Create New South Wales? Because there is the ongoing question.
Either, but create. So, in terms of comparison of investment between states. Oh yeah, well we want more money. Yes. So I'm not entirely. So yes, I think that is correct. I'm not entirely sure exactly where we sit in the hierarchy of state investment. I know Victoria does better than us. I think that with the addition of Made in New South Wales was a big help, but there needs to be more. Oh yeah, look, that budget is by comparison is small. We want more. Yeah.
The Made in New South Wales is meant to be, I think half of that is meant to be on Australian productions, so that 20 million, 10 but is meant to be spent on Australian. And 10,
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's one of those debates. But I think Vincent's raising the point that where we would all, I think, lobbying the New South Wales government about is the difficulty of running a business in New South Wales and ending up spending half of your year, if not more, shooting in other states because they're drawing everyone away from home, family, normality, lives
I
here.
think that argument is the one that had the most sway when we came to getting the extra 20 million. We said, look, what's happening? People are leaving, so you need to do something about it. So this first tranche, it's been more has been on Footloose than domestic drama. But that's not like, it hasn't been because we have an agenda about spending more on one or the other. And next year you'll find that we balance that up. So it's been about demand, and in the first year it's been about making sure that we're investing in a way which demonstrates to the government that this has been a good thing and you should continue it. I think the minister we have right now is a champion for us. I think he sees that. It's about it is usually about convincing Treasury that it is a good idea, but that's something we've already started working on.
And Gladys certainly got it and was supportive of it.
Look, that's the other thing. So the point about talking to the people of New South Wales about how complicated these industries are and how important they are is very important. We also need to talk to the politicians. And we need to talk to the politicians as well in terms of education, not so much in terms of hard lobbying, but education about the importance of the sector. Well, I think it just happens. Not all of them, but you know.
Yeah, well, I'm firing off a million questions at once. I am conscious of trying to let people have more coffee. Pauline, do you want to chuck in one question and then I'll... Yeah. Yeah, I don't think there was a question, as Tony Jones said, it's a comment, not a question. But the two things, how important trade for you? I think our agenda's all about trade, opportunities as small businesses that are looking to trade internationally, trade interstate. I want that to be, I guess, an agenda that everyone's embracing in certain ways, because I think that talks about business sustainability.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Okay. And the only final thing I wanted to say is, how do you think there's a strategy? And Western Australia's just taken what was a part of government out into a separate entity and created their own agency with its own statute. And I know that's where the Office of New South Wales Film and Television Office was. Do you think long term there is a better strategy of having the agencies sitting outside of government as a separate entity, or are you feeling like the safest thing is to be part of government and involved and deeply embedded?
Both models can work, and both models have worked.
Such a politician, Mike.
Well, look, so on the face of it, you'd say, and I think it's appealing for us to think, well, we would like Screen to be its own agency because it's going to have more control over the way it spends its money, over the way it makes its decisions. It's got more independence. That just doesn't really work that way. Destinations New South Wales is its own agency. It has to spend its money according to how the government wants it to spend it. Yes, it has a board, so does Screen. Yes, the decisions go to the board, so does Screen's decisions. I think the benefit for a very, very small agency like ours is that we can call on a larger department for assistance, and there are a lot of links there that you don't have when you're out on your own, and you do a lot of legwork to try and get involved and get money from. So, you know, we've got money from the Family and Community Services to do work with Screen and disability. Now, we wouldn't have had that if we hadn't previously been in the Department of Communities, and so they knew who to come and talk to. You know, there are benefits.
And I think, sometimes it's smoke and mirrors as to how independent different people actually are. Really, everyone's part of the one sort of system, and you've all got to get along.
Well, it's worth pointing out that before the merge, Arts and Screen both reported to the same person in the same department. So structurally speaking, it isn't that different. It's just that we have a much better structure, more focused approach, and we are Create. And I mean, it's been really beneficial. It doesn't, from the outside, it might sound a bit strange, but it has been very beneficial in terms of talking to government stakeholders about this is the government's Office of Art, Screen and Culture. You know.
And creativity generally, which we know is a general exercise we've got to be pushing as an industry. All right, I'm going to wrap it there. We wish you every success in your journey ahead. Thank you so much for being a part of today. Coffees are going to be going for a little bit longer. Thanking Michael.
Thank you.
Opportunity to have a chat. Everyone pass business cards. He'll love you. All right, thanks everyone for being here.